every single day.
People want to connect with someone who...
Self-expression is life.
It is the challenge. It's a challenge of life. You can't get mad at other people for not seeing your vision.
It was all about a grind. Like I said, I was selling CDs, DVDs, and clothes out the trunk of my
Whatever
car.
it takes.
Episode 34, our first guest on the Hustles Chronicles podcast, a little over a year ago. 2 years ago, Roger? 2 years ago. Was no other than Josh Shooky Cohen, at the time the CEO of Junkluggers.
No longer. Now currently unemployed and doing nothing.
Now, fast forward.
He's unemployed.
2 years later, we have him on episode 34. It's been 34 episodes since you came on. Thank you so much. I know you have not been in the limelight in a while. See, you might be a little rusty here. Yeah. But why don't we just start off by, a lot has changed in the last 2 years for you, right? You know, when we originally started this podcast, we had no clue that we were going to sell, correct?
Yeah, and first I'd just like to thank Hustle Chronicles for having me here today. Like I said earlier, I love what you've done with the place. And it's just such a pleasure. You know, I remember the last time I was out, I wasn't invited back for 2 years because of how well I did.
Right.
I also remember I wasn't ever on the cover opening video, not even once, even though it was the first podcast. So I'm hoping we could do better this time and you'll want to use me.
This could be it.
And what I've been doing since I sold?
I never question. No, that's not the question.
Oh, it wasn't on my mind either.
You're being hysterical right now.
All right, that's the question.
The question is, 2 years ago at this time, okay, we were not here. We're in New York City, but we were thinking growth mode. We weren't thinking that we were going to sell the company, right? You were approached by multiple brokers that were interested in acquiring your business, probably at the height of Junkluggers. We just went from the pandemic happening. We were at somewhere around 25 franchises at the time. Now the pandemic happened. Everyone wants to be their own boss. And we sell 75 franchises in about a year, right?
Yeah, about 18 months.
So just walk us through how this even came to fruition where you were approached to sell your company.
Yes, I mean, 2020 hit and we were like very well positioned for growth. And as you mentioned, we grew by about 400% in 18 months, grew all over the country. And, you know, things were really starting to get very big, much bigger. And I've been approached by a bunch of different people about the value of the business, and some were throwing out numbers I really were well beyond what I expected. And I said, let me look into this more. And it was such an exciting time for the business, for the whole company. It was a special time for the team, just like our whole brand. And there was a special culture that I think a lot of people were really attracted to. So, but I explored it and found that the values were really out there, and there were some very suitable fitting suitors for the business. Yeah. And so went through a whole process learning how to sell a business, and you know, it's been a total life changer for me, for the company, and I'm just not. I'm in a different place today because of it, and I don't know, is that?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I see you talking about it, it feels very genuine. Like you never in your wildest dreams could ever imagine that you would have had a successful exit. You know, I know that you had a ton of health complications when you were first starting off with ulcerative colitis, right? With just being able...
Now the world knows that. Hello, world. No, I would say, first of all, I did know that at some point, being an entrepreneur and starting a business, the goal was to sell. That was my goal at some point. I didn't know what happened then or that soon. And I feel like, I sold at a height, but the company has so much more room for growth
Oh yeah, absolutely.
as time goes on.
Yeah, and I think one thing that always comes to mind is like a lot of times I'm asked like, how does it feel to sell and to be acquired? When we think about starting it, how old were you originally?
Older than you. I was 21.
So I was 17.
16, I think.
We always joke about the moment where you tried to, I got kicked out of school and we're sitting on the
Thank
kayaks and we're talking and you're like, this is going to be the greatest moment of your life, And at the time I was like, this fucking moron. I just got kicked out of school. Mom and dad are visiting Rachel, studying abroad. And
Now they're telling people not to go to college.
and thinking like how selfish you were to tell me that, but really you're right. That was really the pivotal moment where I could have been involved from the beginning. And if I wasn't kicked out at that time, which obviously I went back to school and graduated and got the expulsion taken off of my transcript, but at that time, if I wasn't kicked out, I wouldn't have been able to be in charge of bookkeeping and payroll and finance and budgeting, right? So you gave me a lot of lifelong lessons that even if I came in a couple years later, you probably wouldn't have been as desperate and patient with me as being along for the beginning of the journey. So let's just think about those moments, right? When you first started, what comes to mind when you think about the beginning days of Junkluggers?
Beginning days of Junkluggers. I think I was so hands-on then with every little part of the business. And I know you can relate to from answering all the calls from the customers and hearing the needs and a lot of times the urgencies, picking up all sorts of different things, working with, some of my first customers were elderly and really in need, and one of them had their husband pass away. So I remember just the connection with people, the connection with customers. I remember early on building teams and learning about building teams and the challenges there. And you hear every business owner today say, business is great, except it's so hard managing a team. Yeah. And it's true, but it's also, now being on the other side of it and not having a team at the moment, it was one of the most exciting times of my life, even with all the different characters and personalities.
I love it. And, the original photo of us, right, is our mom's Durango with the trailer behind it. When you think about those moments of going out to buy the plywood and writing on the back of the plywood, what does that remind you of?
It reminds me, for one, it feels like it's a totally different life, like a different world at this point. Like things have changed and come so far from there. Yeah. It's unbelievable to think about. It feels like a movie.
Yeah.
And I think, I just hope it's like a good inspiration for other people who want to build businesses that you can start from nothing. And those were such real times in our life. I remember trying to balance the old truck to get the right light. And we were I remember hustling at Marshall's to find 4 pairs of matching khakis to take a photo. And trying to find the crappiest floral couch we could to take those photos. So it was really fun to start something up from nothing and to put your own twist on it.
So then eventually we moved from the Durango and with the trailer to our first truck, which I know today is one of our big goal, right? How to find the 1987 Ford F350 or 250.
Right, yeah.
Standard,
old school pickup truck, yeah.
And that moment, I remember when you first acquired your first real truck and switched from the Durango to, at the moment, nothing felt like a bigger level up, right? Do you remember the feeling of you're taking the next step when you acquired your first commercial vehicle?
Definitely. I think it was a starting point for the rest of my career, and I think your career is the there were always these next stepping points, right? And I've really, and for better or worse, never feel settled. Always thinking about what's next. I remember, the second that truck came, I'm thinking about the next truck. And the second that truck came, I'm thinking of the next
2004, can't remember. Was it Isuzu?
You remember better than me.
Yeah. And
you paid the bills.
Yep. That's exactly. I could picture the finance payment. And at that point, we had Mike Bahari and who was his...
Great guy.
Who's the other guy?
Terry.
And that was the first...
Brandon.
Yep. That was the first time that we had luggers. That wasn't us. Because before that, really, it was myself, Markoulis, Gavin, Lon, and we were just scrapped together.
All people who were here on the podcast today.
Yep. And we would just scrap together whoever we had whenever we had a call come in to go do that job at the moment. So it was either you and I. If you weren't, maybe you were picking up calls or whatever, we would ask someone to come with me. And then eventually we get this 1987 Ford F-1 250 or 350. I'm blanking right now. But at that point, we're like, oh, we're legit, right? So we need to have legit employees. So that feels like a big pivotal moment where we realize we can't do everything ourselves. And maybe it's time to find actual luggers who are professionals in it so we could take on more professional jobs. Like what kind of learning lesson came from when you started to hire people outside of like family and friends?
We're really going back into the Junkluggers story here. So lessons from outside of hiring family and friends. Well, I think sometimes it can be great working with family. Sometimes it cannot be.
Sure.
I know a lot of business owners who are in family businesses, and there's some great things about that and some really tough things about that. But sometimes the trust is something that people think about with family, which I definitely thought about. I think, if somebody's not working out and they're your family, that's a whole different story than somebody else.
That lesson along the way.
And you really take a responsibility when you're an employer to do the right thing for the rest of your employees. I think to make your business as big as possible, to create the most opportunity. I remember early on, I had an employee. This was really, we had no money and we were just getting started. And there was a guy who was not working out for a bunch of different reasons. And I let him go and I handed him $100 bill. And I remember thinking, wow, it's $100 bill that I need right now, but I want to give it to him so he's okay. And I remember him like peeling out of the parking lot and saying he was suicidal and worrying about him all day and trying to call him. And also just coming to grips with the fact that, like I said, this is responsibility to build your business, to be a great employer and to be a great leader. And that can just be so hard and taxing on a lot of people. So I don't know how we got to that point. But
hiring employees, your first employees, and just the responsibility. I mean, I still feel it to this day where it's like these people are relying on me, not only for their current situation to pay their rent, to feed their kids, but also like they're trusting you with their future, whether they stay for 1 year or they stay for 20 years, it's a huge responsibility. And as soon as you get to that moment where you have to hire employees, that's like the moment that you start feeling that weight on your shoulders that we've been talking about all these years, right?
Yep.
So now you take your big step to acquiring your first warehouse.
Yeah, we just did that.
Well, yes, we actually bought the warehouse in the end, but I'm talking about renting your first warehouse. It's on Elliott Street behind Joe's American Bar and Grill. You take on this responsibility of paying rent every single month. I think that's the next real big step in an entrepreneur, moving out of your house and moving into what at the time felt like an official place, right? Official headquarters. Do you remember any feelings that came from when you moved into Elliott Street and, moving into your first official HQ?
I just remember being so proud and being there all times of the day, always neatening up and trying to have things ready for the luggers when they came back, and the little things like when we splurged to spend $200 to get lockers so with their own name tags on them. painting the thing lime green ourselves. I remember, being there late into the night sweeping and making this, this really pretty dungy place at the time, something that was just something that we could be as proud of as possible. And I just remember being this next step with the goal, I'm going to build something really special here.
So now we move from Fairfield to Portchester. Is that the next step?
Portchester.
So now we're starting to move south, right? We don't know at the time, but the goal is going to end up being New York City, right? So we moved to Portchester because we can get more space. By this point, we're now probably up to a truck size of five or six.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more, and we're expanding into Westchester.
We're doing Westchester, so it makes sense.
We hired some more office staff.
Yep.
We had some crazy parties. I remember somebody went through a window at one point. I think one night I was smoking 3 cigarettes at the same time. Like, we really lived it up, and that was a true startup feeling. And we were best friends, and we were coworkers, and we spent most of our time together, and we're all young in our 20s, so it's a really fun, exciting time.
Pre-self iPhone days.
Yeah.
I remember when we moved to Portchester, Osher and myself were the only ones that had what are they? Palm Pilots? No, what are they called?
What
are they called?
The walkie-talkie, Nextels,
because I had to keep track of the money. He had to keep track of the guys. But
to reach each other all the time.
Yeah, so at that point, this is people had cell phones to make phone calls, but we had, what?
Pager?
No, not pagers. What were they called? I can't think of the kind of cell phone they were, but at this point, everyone's using Garmin's, it's GPSs. We're still navigating the world without instant gratification of phones, right? So there was obviously their own challenges and benefits, really, to not having this instant need for.
Yeah, I guess iPhone came out in 2007, but it didn't get big until probably
2010.
Yeah,
I mean, it was unaffordable at that time for sure.
It just wasn't good either.
Right.
Reliable.
So now we move from Portchester. Now we have an office manager. It's starting to feel more official. We're getting gear from Darter Specialties, right? We're starting to put in actual orders for uniforms. We don't have that many employees. Maybe we have 20 altogether at that time. Maybe 15 of them are luggers and 5 of them are us. So as we make it down south, we eventually set up shop at 555 8th Avenue, Suite
305, I think.
305. What did that feel like, setting up your official headquarters in New York City?
Yeah, again, it was fun. It was once we got to Portchester, I had this goal to expand throughout New York City in 5 years, so it just felt like the next step. I had been living in New York City at the time. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a part of the energy full on. We saw huge opportunity in the city. It was the cheapest office space I could find that didn't have rats crawling around. I mean, that was kind of the story of Junkluggers, was bootstrapping and scraping together and making it work. And so that space was, again, it was a party house. We had a lot of fun there, but we also got a ton of stuff done. And I feel like, when you're at that size and you're growing really fast and there's not a lot of rules and you get to make them up as you go, it's a really fun thing to be a part of and to help lead. And again, looking back on it, you don't realize, those are some of the good old days until looking back on them, right? And so it was so stressful. Anytime building the business was stressful and hard, and there was not answers to it, but it was fun to figure it out.
So at some point we move, and now we have a call center in the headquarters.
Yeah, I remember we had it professionally built with plexiglass. We had 3 people in there, and it was such a big deal that we could close the door.
Yep. And I remember Kalila.
Yep.
She was the first call center rep. and that feeling of how legit it was that we were going to have someone dedicated to picking up the phones and trying to convert the phones. At this time, now we're tri-state?
Yeah, and I think we were getting so many calls up until then. It was just so obvious that the better we got at this, the more business we had.
Yep. So now we're in Connecticut. We're in, Fairfield County, Westchester County,
Connecticut, New York, and New
New
Jersey.
York, and then northern New Jersey. Right. So at the time, we don't know, but building a call center is like building a whole nother business, right? And that obviously brings its own obstacles along the way. But ultimately, like, how did you know that you're ready to start building a call center? And this time we didn't know we were franchising yet, right? We're just trying to be able to sustain being a tri-state business.
And so how did we know that?
Yeah, like, what was that feeling like where you're like, holy shit, we have enough phone calls that we need to have people, we need to build out this call center?
I mean, the number of calls that have come in has always surprised me, and it's always relative and like expanding exponentially. But I would say early on, like, I wanted to franchise this business. And so this was the next step in my mind of getting to be a franchisable business. You have to have a national call center. We saw it very successful with one of our competitors. I'm not too proud to learn from my competitors. Yeah. I don't think anyone should be.
No.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think, we get thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of calls now at the company. That was the goal. And it maybe grew bigger than I had ever expected to, but the goal was to get to lots of phone calls and to be a national franchise. And so it was that, and I was sick of hearing the freaking phone ring all the time in the office. So we needed to make it bigger so we could have its own space.
So let's fast forward to 2012. You start deciding we're going to make the move to franchising, right? And this is when you want to change it from being a tri-state company to really a national brand. Well, like, if someone is interested in franchising, I get this question all the time. Like, what are the initial steps into deciding, hey, I'm going to go all in on this franchising concept?
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything. You got to do your homework. You got to know who you're going to be working with, who's leading the company, what the vision of the company is, the values, the results that they've seen for other franchise companies. What are the systems that they offer? Marketing, finance support, operational technology. A good franchise system should be able to speak to all of those things and speak well to them, and have other franchisees who will validate what they're saying. So, I think those are a lot of the different things you're looking at.
But besides from what you need to have set up, like, what was going through your mind when you're ready to franchise? Who did you go to help?
Oh, when I was ready. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
Not like in general.
Got it.
Yeah.
I started going to franchise conventions. I just started looking them up and going to them.
IFA?
IFA would be one. I met with a local franchise consultant, SMB, over Steve Biegelman and his group, and they were great in helping us, just learn more and take the next steps and fill out the paperwork and meet the lawyers and all that stuff. So it was just a project, just learning all about franchising and meeting the right people and meeting a lot of the wrong people. But eventually you set up your franchise agreement, you get your financials together, you kind of in one format show everybody all the different things you'll bring to the table to support them, and you just buckle up, I think, because it's a wild ride to do franchising and to do it right.
So how long does it take to set up a franchise, and how much money would someone if you were to guess, how much money?
If I were to do it today, I would say don't start a franchise with less than $1 million. Wow. We did not have that, but it would make it a whole lot easier.
So you need $1 million just to create a franchise system?
You need probably $30,000 to create a franchise system. That's like the very minimum to create the documents. But it's a startup, so it takes time to get, if you want to build the systems right, to get to break even.
Yep.
Or you're just going to be constantly grinding and bootstrapping like we did, which is why, I chose to be patient. grind it out, not have a lot of money behind me, and that did work, but I would do it differently these days.
And how much time do you think it took from when you decided you wanted to be a franchisor to actually establishing like how much time did you actually spend?
For me, it took me almost a couple of years of going back and forth, but if you have the right people in place, you could do it within 6 months.
So you spend 2 years of your life getting to the point where you're able to franchise it out.
Well, technically 12 years, right? Or 10 years.
Sure, but
building the business, building the model, all
okay,
that.
That's fair. Yeah, 12 years. It takes 12 years to get to the knowledge point that you had, then to be able to continue, right? Because at some point you pivoted from being the CEO of Junkluggers Tri-State to now focusing solely your efforts on franchising out the concept. Now you got to become an brand new expert on a whole new industry. You didn't get into franchising, you got into junk removal, right? You hire someone to help you run the current situation, and then you go all in. 2 years, no return on your investment for 2 years of your time.
12 years.
12 years of your time. That's fair. I'll give you that. Now you start selling franchises.
Yeah, right.
So walk me through, like, what does that look like now for someone who thinks they're interested in getting a franchise business? Like, did your phone ring a lot? Did they have a lot of questions? Did you feel some sort of commitment to,
Got it. Well, my phone did not ring a lot with people interested. It took some time to generate interest. Fortunately, I had some people I knew, my brother, one of our employees, Frank, and some people to get us going. And then my phone rang all the time, right? So what it entails is we went with friends and family at first, which helped us to grow and figure out where the right franchisees were and the right things we needed to make them successful. We weren't really good at marketing, for example, and so franchises weren't growing fast enough. And that's a huge issue if you're selling franchises, and you don't want to sell a lot more until you get that right. So that's just one example. I think there's different ways to generate interest, to find franchise owners, and what we were trying to do was sell franchises and build the system at the same time.
And that's very difficult because now you're doing basically 3 jobs in one.
It is difficult. I think at some degree you're always going to have to learn as you go, but we were pretty unprepared, I would say, at the start.
Okay. So from 2013 to 2020, there's a lot that happens, right? You hit the stalemate, you figure out, we need someone who's specialized in marketing. You start helping the initial franchisees figure out how to make it. You have some failures. You replace them now knowing what kind of actual franchise partner you need. What was the big pivotal moment that changed you from a 25 franchisee to all of a sudden now 100
we had like 400 territories awarded, I think, when I left.
Wow. Okay.
So
what would you
I think
say?
the big pivotal was we had an opportunity to really grow rapidly when COVID hit because of the unique market that we were in and the unique demand at that time, and we were well positioned to do it.
Boom,
we
right
had
there.
The best people in all the different roles. We were solid as a team, and then the demand hit. It took a really long time from 2004 to 2020 for that time, for it to be our time. But when it was our time, we were ready to go with it.
That is in my mind, you were well positioned. You figured out, people look at Junkluggers and they see the success of now, really, but it's all those, just like you said, you didn't just get 2 years of practice, you got 12 years practice. So to get from the 12 years to really, we're talking about the 16-year mark, that's all of that work, all of those hard learning lessons, all of that brought it to this one moment. We're positioned right. COVID hits. People want to be their own boss. People don't want to lay their hands or put their life savings on the line for a large corporation when everyone's laying off every single person.
And it's a steady, reliable business. I mean, throughout COVID and beyond, people have junk. They always need to get rid of it, and they want to do it with the company they trust and that does the right thing with their items. And that's the core of what Junkluggers has always been about.
How many people in your mind did it take to get to this point? In 16 years, if you were to guess how many employees we had.
Employees and like people who worked with us in different ways.
I guess vendors too, and
Not customers? Not including customers?
Let's go to customers after, but like in your mind, how many, like if you think about the amount of relationships that you needed to build, right? And now you keep making the joke of like, what am I going to talk about? But you're probably exhausted from these 20 years and you're taking this time now to take a breather because you had to literally your success was laid upon hiring the right people, letting them trust you. That's I know it's a lot of pressure for myself. And one of the other podcasts we talked, 200 people are relying on me daily right now. We're talking about thousands, right? Yeah. Between employees, vendors, everything. So thousands of people are relying on you. A lot of them are going to be disappointed, right? A lot of people leave being like, this wasn't what I was told it was going to be, or this is taking longer than I expect. Not everyone's going to wait 16 years, right?
Right.
So like, what does that feel like now looking at the other end? What kind of learning lessons came after thousands of people relying on you?
I think it's amazing to be able to rally that many people in different ways and to have their support for however long it lasted. Yeah. I think there's a lot of really talented people who have been involved with Junkluggers. Yeah. And it was really a privilege to work with those people, not blowing smoke. I truly mean that. The question again was what?
Just like, what kind of pressure did you feel?
The pressure, yeah. The pressure really it's hard. It's really stressful. And when you're dealing with people's, life savings or their families and things aren't going well and they're looking at you or looking at me and I don't always have the answer, that's really hard. I took it personally. I think it was just a combination of excitement because, again, it was really fun to build the business. But so it's like the good times are really good and the bad times are really bad. And that's how I felt. And I remember sometimes feeling like my back actually hurt because it was feeling so heavy from all the weight on it. Physically, I felt that. And so it's nice to know that we got to such a great place. I was able to build it with so many good people, so many who are still involved today. Mm-hmm. And some who aren't, unfortunately, or fortunately, for whatever it is.
Sure.
But it was just fun.
At what point do you meet Peggy?
My girlfriend of 20 years or so. No. So I met my wife in 2006, probably around there.
And how much do you think she played a part in your entrepreneur success journey?
Well, is she watching this or?
If we're lucky,
probably not.
If we're lucky, she's gonna watch.
No, she will. She's always says she's the number one Junkluggers groupie, and hopefully my groupie. I think she played a huge role, and I think behind lots of successful people is a strong person to support them, and she has a social work background, so I think she was able to be a support network and a therapist, and just to believe in me, and I think that's what people need.
Yeah.
And so totally, I was talking to somebody the other day who said he was afraid to get married. He was, I think his late 20s. He's like, how can I get married? I'm always changing. And I'm always realizing what an idiot I was a couple of years ago. And I said, well, at least what I can experience, what I've experienced, and if you're lucky, is that you'll grow with that person.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely been fortunate that that's happened with us.
So now your kids join into the Junklugger ecosphere 10 years ago. They're 10?
Yep. Into.
I'm a great uncle. Yep. 10 years old, right? Do you remember the change in your mental space when bringing a kid in, not only managing having kids and trying to work hard, but also the pressure that you felt by wanting to provide for these kids?
Totally. I mean, they were born in 2014. I started franchising in 2013. Jesus. So, and they're twins, and I'd never been a parent. So that's just was really hard. For any first-time parent, it's hard. let alone when you have two of them, and I'm starting up a business. And so, but looking back, and I'm like, thank God I made it. And also, it just builds grit and character, and it's nice to be beyond that too, and to be looking back with good memories.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit now to the actual sale of the company, right? December 14th,
Peggy's 40th birthday.
December 14th, 2022. What did that feel like to you when I know I was very involved, obviously, and the last 24 hours was probably the most stressful 24 hours of my life. We're going back and forth, trying to figure out the final touches. And then I remember, we're on a call December 14th, 9 a.m. with 20 lawyers, right? Are all on the call.
Yep.
And we're just trying to figure out the last minute details. And then we finally come to an agreement. And then it goes into your hands. I remember there was the 2-hour gap where I'm just freaking out and panicking for you to, put your pen on the mark and officially sign everything over, transfer over all the trucks and the employees and everything. So what did that moment feel like?
Obviously it was very emotional. This was my baby. It has been my baby, and it felt like I was sending my baby to college. And it was exciting, and it was something I've been working towards for a good year at least at that point, let alone the 19 years before that. Definitely some fear, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen to the team? What's going to happen to the company? And it was also a little bit of that feeling of being lonely at the top. Only you and me and Larry could enjoy and appreciate.
Yeah.
Nobody else was benefiting as much. All they knew was change. Yep. And so I felt a little guilty, bad, am I hurting other people? And so I remember a little bit of a bittersweet feeling, this is not something we can all go and enjoy together.
And obviously that is a sign of being a great leader, right? Where you're thinking about others, putting others in front of yourself. But this was really the moment to put yourself in front of everyone else, right? So...
And that was the question I could ask myself. I was would everybody else do the same thing as me? Because the guilt was real and I did feel it. But I felt like the opportunity was something that nobody else would have turned down.
So then we sell, right? And, oh man, I think at that moment for me, that was the proudest moment of my life and your life, right? Because I feel like there were so many people at that time that were just such haters. No one, for 15 years, no one thought it was going to be anything like it was, right? So.
And I don't know if you remember, it was also a tough year leading up to that. So.
Sure. Dealing with cancer,
which only solidified my decision that, life is short.
Yeah. So I know you tell me a lot how, me getting cancer played a part in you actually deciding to sell it. You want to just talk about why that made such a huge impact in your sale?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it was just showed that life is short. You never know when things are going to happen. I thought it would give both of us an opportunity to have a second lease on life.
Sure.
To have a lot of opportunity and to do a bunch of different things. And it was scary. And all I had known since I was 21 was Junkluggers.
Sure.
But it's not all I wanted to know for the rest of my life. And so
absolutely,
that led up to that.
So then you spend a year making sure the transition goes smooth. And then you officially transitioned out of Junkluggers, and Justin comes in. He's coming on tomorrow morning.
There we go. Now you have a real superstar.
After he comes to our lugger meeting, which is at 6:30 in the morning.
Okay, I'm not going to be at that one.
Yeah, exactly. So
been at a few of them.
Yeah, so you find who I agree with you. I think is one of the most ideal presidents to take over, pass the reins over. So it's been basically 8 months. of you not being
We took
involved?
over officially in March.
Sorry. So 6 months. Like, what does that look like now? Because I know you make a lot of jokes, right? But I always tell people you're like the busiest person that I know, right? Because you don't have that day-to-day responsibility. So you can do these, what people would consider these once-in-a-lifetime moments. So, like, what gets you excited on a day-to-day basis now?
It's a great question. I think I'm still trying to figure it out. I think there are days where I wake up with a bunch of anxiety, like, what am I going to do today? And after 20 years of building a business and working so hard and sending millions of emails, I became programmed to just work really hard.
Yeah.
And to check my email, which I still check 17 times a day. I don't get any freaking emails. So if someone could email me, that would be great.
That's amazing.
But I'm really trying to push myself to do the things I enjoy. And I think I've been doing that by being very physically active, playing lots of sports, doing a lot of golf and tennis and surfing. Been traveling a ton. Been doing some investing and learning about real estate and invest in some businesses that I really think are promising and cool. And most importantly, more than anything, just having the time to spend with the quality time to spend with my friends and my family that I was just always, never focused enough to be fully present.
Sure. So it's funny, most people want to sell, or most entrepreneurs that are watching this want to sell their company and make it to you. Now you make it to officially live the American dream, right? And you have anxiety about not having the stress of owning a business. What do you think about that?
I've talked to other people who've been through it, and I think I don't want to be the person who sells their business and makes a bunch of money is complaining, because that's not at all how I feel.
I don't think that's how I'm taking it.
But it's just a total adjustment and rethinking what fulfills me and having all the time in the world to think about it.
Yeah, I feel the same way right now, and I'm still working for the Junkluggers. I feel like I have a lot of obligation to my coworkers. I feel like I've been very vocal about it. I have a huge obligation to Authority Brands. They trusted me, and they still trust me, so I feel this huge weight on my shoulder just to succeed and grow to the next level. We're
shout out Elliot Rosenbaum.
I know.
Shout out Leanne.
He gets a shout out.
Shout out.
So, he does.
Did you used to do that all the time?
Yeah.
Shout out.
Shout outs. But yeah, I still feel that huge obligation to them, and I feel a huge obligation. My identity is Mr. Junklugger, right? So it's if now Authority Brands' identity is Junkluggers, how do I fill in those moments? And I agree with you. I'm still trying to figure it out. And people don't like change, right? So a lot of people don't make it to where you are because they're not comfortable with the uncomfortable. You were always comfortable with change. Sometimes it worked out. Sometimes it was a huge investment. Sometimes you had to backtrack, right? But, it's pretty amazing to hear that even at the level you're at, you still feel this identity crisis of what do I fill in from what it used to feel like?
Yeah, because while Junkluggers was really, really hard, it was also extremely fulfilling. And so that's a part of me that I'm missing now and searching for in different ways. And yeah, I think you're totally right on with change is hard, and I think that's why a lot of people don't do it or don't have the opportunity to do it. And it's just a unique experience.
Do you see yourself building another brand?
Everybody asks me that. I don't know. It's kind of weird because I feel like I have the abilities now to do it. So am I going to use my abilities or not? It's something to be seen.
Yeah, but everyone asks me that too, right? But deep down, when you think about it, do you feel like you want to give obviously it doesn't have to look the same. Maybe it's not a service, maybe it's a product, or maybe it's a new
I want to build something else, whether it's a business with lots of people and franchises or it's something else. I feel like I got a second act and more to give.
Interesting. And Like, what do you feel like if you were to guess what it's going to look like 5 years from now?
Today, I say the things I'm most focused on are doing something like buying a big piece of commercial real estate and doing something unique with it, or starting a dude ranch in Connecticut.
And what is a dude ranch? Because I don't know.
Dude ranch would be you're going for the day or for the week or the weekend, and you're riding horses, shooting guns, fishing, camping out, grilling, Western style, stuff like that.
Interesting. What do you like when you think about your legacy, right? And you think about, I always see people quoting this. You're not on social media anymore, right? You can't see, but you live two lives, right? Your first life is when you take your last breath, and the second life is when someone stops mentioning your name, right? So when you think about your legacy and you think about how many people played a part in making it to this point, what do you want to be remembered as?
I don't know what this classifies me as, but I've never worried too much about that. And maybe that's because I built a business that I'm really proud of. And so it's kind of like, check. But I think, honestly, maybe this is like such a negative way to put it.
Yeah. But
like, it doesn't freaking matter. Like, everyone's going to forget everybody's names at some point. We're living in such a blip in time. And that's why I'm just focused on my family, the people closest to me, and making the most of the life that I have.
You prefer no one watches this episode.
I would prefer that.
If it's a low view count, you'll be happier than too many people watching it. He's actually the first guest that we've had on this is don't watch this. Don't look at the content. Don't watch the long form. We don't want to hear from you.
But you're a great interviewer, so it's just the interviewee.
Next, I keep talking about this, but hopefully the next time you come on, I have a legit podcast studio, and instead of people
look forward to that.
Yeah, instead of people just like trying to come in right for the moment, you have an experience where you sauna, cold plunge, swim, and then we go shoot
like
some
that.
form. So
and then you come back to the dude ranch.
And then I go to, can we change the name to something that's not a dude ranch?
That's a real term.
Okay. Sure it is.
Get on Google.
Okay, so if you could have a billboard anywhere in the world, what would it say and why? And you've already answered this question.
Well, I'm not a CEO anymore, so I don't have to be like as politically correct.
For sure you don't have.
I'm actually about to rent a billboard. It's right on the highway, and it says "Stop anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism equals racism." And so that's my stand right now. I think that minorities help build this country, and I think Jewish people are being treated very unfairly because of a conflict they didn't start. And I think that the people in America should rally around Jewish people like they should every other minority that's helped build the country.
Preach, for sure. Is there any questions you have for me?
What's the next steps for your podcast?
Well, we just got back into it. Roger, I just have to shout out Roger quickly. He's the number one salesperson we've ever had in the entire Junkluggers ecosystem. So we've had at least 100 salespeople in Junkluggers.
True, Roger?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of.
Lon let you off today. I'm shocked.
So first step is just figuring out how to do this in a way where people are engaged and it's as painless as possible for, these world-class guests to come on, but also to figure out, obviously today is a great example, having 2 kids under 4. At one point, Marley was sitting on my lap.
But that's part of you, so it's all right.
We've tried to make different environments work. We just woke up Samson, so I'm sure Danielle's going to be absolutely thrilled when we finish this. I'm actually going to make this go on as long as possible so she can't scream at me.
You can't shoot in the sauna.
Yeah, too bad. But so we want to figure out a good cadence, I feel like, and I think one thing that has become clear just by starting it up again today is like there's so much more to be talked about than just entrepreneurship. So we want to just start tackling different types of topics that I'm passionate about and I know other people are super passionate about. And just, yeah, like, although your feeling is that we're just a blip in the world, my feeling's always been creating this legacy that my kids can watch and they can be proud of their father. So, you know,
I respect that for sure.
yeah. So for me, it's like,
That comes back to family.
And also like, I've always felt very passionate that I'm going to act the same way, whether hundreds of people watch this or thousands of people watch it. And I think the issue of right now in this world is that people want instant gratification, and people forget about what it's like to sit down and look people in the eyes and talk without referencing their cell phone to show them a video or to show them, you know, like say I say something and it's not right. You know, there's always that, oh, look at Google. Google says, you know, you're not right. So just like getting back to the basics of human communication means a lot to me. And I'm scared when I drive around and everyone's looking at their cell phone because we're sitting in a little bit of traffic. You know what I mean? Like, people need to be doing something at all times. And I actually admire how you've figured out how to be more comfortable in your skin by getting off social media, because I told you I took off the month of May and I was very proud of myself, but it really just made me even more aggressive looking at my cell phone for June, July, and August. Before you know it, I'm like, holy fuck, I've been back on looking at social media for 3 months now. And, you know, when I get my weekly summaries of how much time I spent on my phone, I'm like, okay, 9 hours, figure 3 hours a day is podcasts. That doesn't count because I'm not actually looking at my phone.
Right.
2 hours a day is using my phone as a GPS. Okay, so that's 5. Maybe an hour or 2 is email. So what the hell is that other 2 hours? I'm like, oh shit, I'm looking at social media. So I get scared that I'm looking at my phone when I'm missing these moments with my kids, you know?
Just delete it.
Yeah. So,
But not you viewers out there. You keep using it.
so this is a funny question because the final question is, if people want to reach out to you, how do they do it? And where do you prefer?
Email me, I guess.
Give you your personal email. This is going to be cute.
Does anybody actually watch this?
We'll see.
Hit up Zach and he will get in touch with me.
Okay, I'm his booking agent. It seems like now.
Yes.
What's his name? The original guy from what's his name? Oh, I can't think of his name. He's the the lead singer of Van Halen. Do you know his name? Anyone? He's Jewish, so you might know him. No. David Lee Roth does not have a cell phone.
Neither does Simon Cowell.
So David Lee Roth does not have a cell phone, and when Joe Rogan wanted to book him for his podcast, he had to reach out to he literally has a booking agent who's just an elderly lady who picks up the phone and says, David Lee Roth's line, and you leave a message for him, and then once a week. He won't take messages every day because it affects his day-to-day routine so much. So once a week, he'll have a meeting with her and she'll say who reached out to him and he'll tell her what to do.
Love that. Old school, but I like it.
So if you're interested in talking
hit up my booking agent.
Hit up booking agent.
We talk weekly.
I'm pretty cheap. All I need is cold plunges or saunas.
You already have that.
Yeah. So, and I think that's it. Episode 34 in the books for a guy who said he doesn't have much to talk about. Thank you so much. You know, I know we did use a booking agent. I had to talk to you
next time.
And I know these lights.
Did you see that Curb episode where Larry had to go through Conan's booking agent to talk to him?
Yeah.
Need clearance?
Yeah. So next time, that's how it'll be.
We already have clearance.
But
you should get him on the podcast.
Conan O'Brien
or Larry.
I would love to.
Either one.
If anyone has a connection.
Shout out Larry David.
That's it. We love you so much. We're so grateful that you're watching this, even if some people tell you not to watch it. And more episodes on the way. Shout out to everyone. Lug life is no more. the Hustle Chronicles podcast is the future. We thank you.